Hello and welcome to WTN Informer. I am Desiree Mago. Time to take a look at what's making the news. The Central Committee of Parliament met on Tuesday to discuss and debate the national ordinance on joint custody of minors and underage children. This meeting took place at 10 a.m. The parliamentarian hearing is the first of several to be held during the coming weeks with respect to changes to the Civil Code. Parliament in a session of October 3rd requested that other entities be heard with respect to the changes that are to be made to the Civil Code. The Central Committee of Parliament also met with Minister of Justice Roland Duncan at 2 p.m. The minister also celebrated his birthday on Tuesday. The meeting dealt with changes to the Penal Code with respect to special investigation methods, monitoring equipment, and infiltration for law enforcement agencies. Minister of Justice Roland Duncan in Parliament.
This also holds good for what you call in the law, the cannot undershoot that preliminary investigative search, etc., that you begin by checking a case out, etc. What happens if the information, what do you do with it if the investigation is stopped, doesn't go ahead, or it leads to conviction or to a crime? All that is something that we need to evaluate. It's there in the law, we need to put it into practice, and so we can see later on how it is being done. Infiltration, I mentioned a while ago, the undercover infiltration type things, and one of the questions is how far can the public ministry go? I just mentioned an example of Texas, an example that happened in Holland. If there's a conflict between the exercise, public ministry makes a deal with somebody to do something in things, when who supervises that? How legal is it? How it is? Can the public ministry just withdraw, or can the public ministry have a free hand? These are things that need to be checked on, and we need to be able to establish who's to be supervising this and all of that. So what are going to be done, and you will see throughout the law that by federal decree or national decree, instructions are to be given, and we need to do several things. And bringing this law into effect is nice one way, but we need to do some additional work. Particularly, we need to train the police officers, members of the public ministries, how to deal with this new law. This is a new something. And we have to put together a plan how we're going to deal with the compliance with the obligation to notify, how to destroy information, when to destroy information after it has been gathered. Technical equipment. I have been in discussion with the telecommunication providers about setting up arrangements with them and the installation of technical installations. Like I said, tapping is old style, it's still being done of course, but what we're into now is much more modern, much more technologically, and again, I must admit, much more invasive in terms of communication and the services that are granted thereby. So we need to establish the procedures, make proper arrangements, and while I hesitate a little bit to say the word transparent, because transparency should be there in terms of the arrangements made, but again, sometimes we can't be transparent in what we're doing, because if we're too transparent in what we're doing, then the person who's being investigated will know that they're being investigated, and then that might just disturb the case, etc. So, but after the fact, and like I mentioned a while ago, during the court case, all must come out, all must be clear, all must be available to the court as well as the accused, so that he can defend himself or she can defend himself properly, and that we know what the net result is of the investigation that has been carried on. So if there's a conviction, the court can be very clear in terms of what information has been used for the conviction.
DP faction member of Parliament Leroy DeWeaver was very critical when it comes to the privacy of the general public. The member of Parliament cautioned the minister to not take the law lightly.
You also talk about the presumption of innocence. You know, we are in the country of the Netherlands. We are still under the Napoleonic Code, I believe. You make reference to Texas. I'm only asking this because it is important, because we do use a lot of unethical techniques in a lot of different countries, and I don't think that we should necessarily import them here. So, as I said, we have 10 years that we have been working with this in the Netherlands. Out of that, there's been a first evaluatie that came out by the same WDC report that knocked St. Martin asunder. And I would ask the following from you, Mr. Minister. If you can just briefly explain to me, when we talk about the difference between looking and surveillance activities, because this is part of the documentation that we have. Just give me a difference between so-called bracket looking in and surveillance activities. And then if you can also explain to me what they refer to as the Talon criterion. You mentioned it earlier, the pseudo-purchase services. So we have a police going out, buying services, buying drugs, buying stolen property, and then acting as if he is one of the bad guys. God knows how long he will be doing it before we found out later on that he's actually working for the police force. In the meantime, there might have been some profits made. Just explain to me how you're going to go about that. Then you talk about the obligation of notification. I want to see something in there that would give recourse for the obtaining of bad information that an informant might use that eventually would bring individuals in this community into bad light. So, in other words, we have to be pretty sure of what we're doing. We simply cannot give everybody a loaded gun and walk around town and play as if they're a detective and making all kinds of ways to exonerate themselves from wrongdoing.
Member of the National Alliance in Parliament, Louis Laveste, who supports the law, had a series of questions about the law on Tuesday. The Member of Parliament says the people need to know what they will be experiencing.
Quite upfront that I have no intention of giving the justice system more headache than they already have. I also want to send a very clear and concise message that my support for the judicial foundation of this young nation is rock solid. And I also want to make it abundantly clear from the very beginning that it is my understanding, and I also agree, that there needs to be some adjustments to the laws as we know them today. And a lot of us in here need to be realistic, and I am one realistic person because, Madam Chair, it is a fact that internationally we are being looked at and we are being expected. It is expected of us to do what is necessary to fight the ever-growing, changing wave of crimes and the way people execute their terms, especially, Madam Chair, with regards to technology today. And when we look at terrorism, when we look at the high-tech crimes that take place, Madam Chair, it is evident that we need to adjust. And so I want to make it clear from the very beginning that I will, and I'm prepared to cooperate, and I understand the changes that are being put before us here today. So my questions and my approach here today is more for clarification and to ensure that we come with the best possible law, and if necessary, amendments to the law to ensure that violations and the protection of our people are not violated because of a law that we are putting in place to fight crime. Having said that, Madam Chair, I think it is important that this distinguished panel here today understand that it would be irresponsible of us as a parliament if we just go along to get along because Curacao has adopted it, Aruba's looking at it, and now St. Martin must look at it, and so we must look at some kind of uniform approach. It would be wrong for us to just go along to get along. And so I too have my reservations. And so the questions I put here is not to give you more headache, but to see if we can help each other come with what we can consider something that is palatable, not just for us as Parliament, but for the citizens whom we represent. And so, Madam Chair, my reservations begins from the onset, the right to privacy. And I am one, Madam Chair, who is willing to compromise in that, and I have stated that clear when we talked about the issue of the surveillance cameras to help fight crime in St. Martin. So obviously I am willing to compromise. And so, but I need to hear more from this distinguished panel here this afternoon that the right to privacy is not being trampled and invaded in reckless abandon. That's what I want to protect, not in reckless abandon. Many speakers have spoken before me, and when I say that, I have no intention of embarrassing anyone, but it is a fact that in all layers in the system, because you see, we are mere mortals. Sometimes there are errors, unintentional, sometimes they are intentional, and sometimes it is just plain out, I don't like you, I'm going to get you, and so I'm going to infringe on the spirit of the law to get you. It has happened. We have witnessed it, Madam Chair, in all layers of the judicial system. So, because we're dealing with human beings, it is incumbent upon us that we put the necessary mechanisms in place to ensure that the checks and balances are in place. What am I saying? I need to know, quite frankly, who's guarding the guard that's guarding the guard. And I think that that's a fair question.
And that brings us to the end of WTN Informer. I am Desiree Mago. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your week.